Today, Hi-Rez had another update show, and believe it or not, I actually got up at 5:30 to watch it live from Australia. That was interesting. But anyways, we're gonna talk about the changes that were happening, or will be happening rather, and how Hi-Rez discussed past changes as well as some of the new skins that are coming out and everything else that was announced. And we're gonna break it down into the segments that they had in the show as well, but make it a little bit shorter and a little bit more comprehensive. So the first thing that was talked about were changes that will be coming in the upcoming patch. And there were two items here that were mentioned specifically: Runeforged Hammer and Blackthorn Hammer. And that shouldn't really come as a surprise to anyone, because Blackthorn Hammer is extremely prominent on most warriors at the moment, and Runeforged Hammer is just very present on certain guards, and as such, that both are kind of a little bit overpowered is very known and was kind of expected as well. So Hi-Rez didn't quite state yet what they're going to nerf. I'm expecting some sort of health nerf to Blackthorn Hammer to make it a little less rewarding in terms of effective health. Whether it's Runeforged, I'm not quite sure which direction they will go. There are multiple options here, but probably just take down some power. One of the reasons they mentioned for the Runeforged nerf specifically is also Cernunnos and the interaction between his stances, or its slowing stance, and Runeforged Hammer. So it might be that we'll see a targeted nerf towards Cernunnos here as well, instead of a overall blanket nerf to Runeforged. Another guard that will possibly see a nerf due to a very strong performance is Xbalanque. He's been, well, pretty much everywhere as of late, and it's getting quite bothersome, I think, because of the fact that his ultimate is also a very disruptive tool, along with him just being very strong in the current meta. What I thought was interesting in that regard is that Eveline and Asi weren't mentioned at all. Of course, they just got changed, so we don't really know the impact yet, but they may have an impact on certain hunters in the meta. I could, for example, imagine a god like Anhur being significantly stronger with the new Eveline, and that may shift the meta naturally already. So it may not even be necessary that these hunters are tackled all too much, depending on who is on top after all these changes. But Hi-Rez didn't really talk about that, so we'll see what happens in that regard. Another thing that was mentioned though were Merlin, King Arthur, and Freya. They all were just nerfed, so Hi-Rez wants to see the impact of those nerfs, but they are open to possible further adjustments in the future. And this especially goes for Freya, where they're still trying to find her point of balance. Three other gods that receive some changes in the next patch are Scylla, Kukulkan, and Bastet. But in this case, this is not about any kind of buff in that sense, but more a quality of life improvement. They all have line abilities that end in an AoE, and some targeters were updated in that regard in the past. Now their abilities will get updated targeters too, so you can see if the area of effect will reach certain enemies through the targeter alone. They are looking at Guardian changes in the future. There was just that one change with the Ghost minion that was added in Duo Lane to give Duo a little bit more XP. So I want to see if that changes that already. But at the moment, Guardians are underperforming, and they're considering to buff them, which I think is a bit of a scary thought, knowing how Guardians were performing last season. And I think Guardians underperforming may also partially be due to the fact that Warriors got heavily buffed, and the meta for Warriors is generally more favorable right now, and solo is more favorable and everything. So yeah, I don't know if this is the way to go, or if it's more a point of looking at nerfing some things again. Because one thing that was not mentioned is once again the jungle, and I feel like especially the jungle is falling behind more and more. And I posted a tweet about that just the other day. The competitive games frequently showed that the jungler fell behind the levels even when ahead in kills, often even the same level or just one level above the support, instead of being close to everyone else in level. And if we buff everyone else, then assassins will fall behind very drastically. I'm just saying. And with that, we're getting to the god changes. Now, there are a few god changes that were made in recent patches, and we'll just talk about how they affected the gods in terms of win rate, popularity, and perception. The first one was Bellona. She got an increase to her passive protections. Her win rate actually went up a lot, from 63 to 39, and her popularity stayed exactly the same on 28. The perception was kind of It wasn't really felt all that much. People didn't really recognize that much because it didn't sound like much. And the impact of it on paper is much larger than what we're able to realize when reading these changes here, apparently. The situation is different for the next god though, and that is Tyr. he got a little bit of a buff in multiple regards, and that is on one hand his base protections and on the other hand his healing. This was received very positively by the community. Perception was good here, they thought those were good changes for him, and it increased his win rate. He was previously in place 93 in terms of win rate, so relatively bad, and this pushed him up to place 78. Still not overperforming by any stretch of imagination, but a little bit more towards the center than before, so definitely a change that helped him. At the same time, interesting enough, he is still relatively popular, with a popularity of spot 30, and that actually hasn't changed at all. He is equally popular as before, which I think would mean that otherwise he probably would have dropped off in return for Arthur going up a little bit more, even though he's already the most popular god, I think, but just more people playing him in spot 1 even. And that brings us to another warrior as well, and that's Odin. So Odin got a nerf that was a bit awkward. Odin got the attack speed debuff removed from his ultimate, and the duration scaling removed along with that. And the reason for this was that right now Odin does really well outside of Conquest, whereas in Conquest he's a bit more inconsistent. At times he will do really well, at other times he won't. It's kind of a toss-up depending on the matchup and, well, how many guards he can effectively block off with his ultimate. There was, however, a mistake with this change, and that is why the perception of it was very bad as well. With the changes, how they went through right here, there is no reason to level the ultimate, because anything that was beneficial in leveling it up was gone. That obviously led to that bad perception, and Hyris apologized for that now and said that was obviously not the intention, and they kind of rushed out this change a little bit too much. The win rate, however, didn't really change much. It went from 45 to 48, so in Conquest this doesn't have a major impact. And his popularity actually went up a little bit from 85 to 82, but that's just the ups and downs with different patches. For Sobek, we had a change that buffed his base HP and protections. The perception of that was it wasn't really talked about much, and it wasn't really hyped up or anything. There were just other changes that seemed more interesting. His win rate went up from place 98 to place 91, so a fair bit of an increase for our Guardian, but also nothing super drastic. His popularity, on the other hand, even decreased a little bit from 67 to 69, so realistically, no real change here. And then we had Sylvanus. Now, Sylvanus was probably the most massive change in this whole picture. He got a buff with the speed of his wisps being increased, so they just fly out faster, and the initial heal of the ability being higher. That means that he is a bit more of a burst healer than before, and that had a very high impact on his win rate. He was in spot 92 beforehand, so very much bottom of the barrel, and went up to 46, so very much middle ground, which is interesting, especially because he's usually a bit of a riskier character to play as well. His popularity went up a fair bit as well, from spot 70 to 63, but not nearly as much as his win rate went up here. The perception wasn't that crazy. It wasn't talked about all too much. The change was not really a big deal for most, but it was a big deal because the win rate increase, especially for a Guardian here, is very, very high. A few announcements regarding community stuff were made. The Neath Twitch Prime skin is now available. There is a Battle for Asgard streamer event with a prize pool of 7,000 gems at the moment, but it wasn't really quite clear who can win the gems or whatever. And there's a weekend party with friends event coming up. So if you're in a party with one friend, you get double worshippers XP and favor, and 2 or more friends, you get triple XP worshippers and favor. And then we have the new skins. Now, some of you may have already seen those skins because some of them were already on PTS. I'm not quite sure if all of them were, but I'm briefly going to show some screenshots of them here, as well as some screenshots of the coolest abilities. The first skin is Itty Bitty Chibi Arachne, a cutesy Arachne skin, which I think is really cool because it really stands out from her other skins. It's just a very nice design. And what's really cool about this skin as well is that it has a VXG, where she's basically carried around in a net hammock by 2 spiders, and it just looks really funny when she walks across the map like that. The second skin is Blood X Chaac. Blood X Chaac is, well, kind of a futuristic Chaac skin, but to be honest, he doesn't really have all too crazy things going on in my opinion. It's mostly a bit of a different color scheme and then some futuristic elements added into it. The next skin is Oasis Djinn Aphrodite. That looks relatively cool in my opinion. And this skin has some very nice visual effects, has some sand effects on the two, and also has a VXG where she flies around on a carpet. Then we have Divine Beats Amaterasu, and this is technically a DJ skin. It has the DJ VXG, but wow, this skin is actually really cool. So what you can see with the skin is that her mirror is like a turntable instead, and her passive indication are like these beats or these bars going up around her for the audio levels, and that changes in color depending on which stance you're in. And if you hit an enemy, then they get a disco flow around them, and the color of that changes as well when they are affected by your passive. And what's also very cool about this skin is the ultimate sound, which is like a kind of a beat every time you hit someone with the ultimate. And then the VXG, she's using the turntables as well. I think the skin is just really cool in terms of design. It looks a little bit like the League of Legends K-pop style actually. And it also has a lot of really nice effects. And I think Amaterasu didn't have a really cool skin in a while, and this one is just really, really good. And I'm really not a fan of DJ skins, but this one stands out to me. And then we have Ragnarok Jormungandr, a bit more classic here, I guess. It's just a spiky, horned fire version of Jormungandr essentially, which looks pretty cool. And what we'll also get with this patch is a From the Depth chest for the new From the Depth Nox skin, which will be released on Friday. And apparently the next update show will be huge. We don't know what exactly will be in it, but I think it will be 2 new gods set in Horus. From everything that Harris has said about it so far, it sounds like they're going to release both at the same time. So we can look forward to that, and I can look forward to getting up at 6 AM again. With that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this was interesting, insightful, and if you're new to the channel, feel free to stop by and ring the bell, it really helps me out. Other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.